Hello, YouTube land. This is Brenton coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. Today we have something a little bit different. A couple stories that are out of the normal genre of Bigfoot and Dogman and those kind of typical creatures that we talk about. Even though this guy does have some Bigfoot stories, he's got some other type stories that are very, very fascinating, and you're going to enjoy this. If anyone out there has a story they'd like to share, before we get started here, you can email me at brentonsawin@gmail.com. Give me a brief description of your story and contact information. I'll get a hold of you as soon as possible, and we can talk about you coming on the show. If anyone wants to contribute to the show, you can go to a link in the description, and it's a PayPal Me link. It's super easy to use. You can make a contribution to the show there. Now, today we have a guy named Steve. I'm just going to call him Steve at the moment, and we'll ask him to introduce himself in a moment. And you're going to really like this. I just could not wait to talk to this guy. But anyway, let's just go to our guest. Hey, Steve, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fine, Britton. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, man. If you would, introduce yourself, Steve, and then we'll get into some of these stories that you have.
Yeah, well, as you know, my name is Steve, and I'm 53 years old. I was born here in Humboldt County, and I've lived in the mountains of southeastern Humboldt County all my life. My parents have owned property here and whatnot, and in a
In Humboldt?
very, mountainous area in Humboldt County.
And what state's
by
this?
trade, this is in California.
Okay, all right.
Northern California.
Okay. Go ahead.
What we call Northern California, I mean, we're only like 100 miles from the Oregon State border, so.
All right. There you go. Just in case someone didn't know, it's because people all over the country and world actually watch this. So, all right, continue.
Yes, and I grew up in the logging industry here, and that's what I did by trade. And also my father was into logging also. And, I just grew up here in the mountains, and I've done hunting. I'm into hunting and fishing and hiking and looking for, Indian relics on our properties and that, and just lots of woodsy things,
Right. Yeah. A lot of people envy you folks in Northern California because you have really amazing type woods there with huge trees, and we watch this kind of stuff on TV and we wish we were there. So what I mean?
Yes, in fact here I live in one of the areas that has some of the last old growth fir, stands of fir timber and they're, get as large as 13, 14 foot on the butt, on the stump.
Yeah.
And it's just like a rainforest here. And in fact, it's here on Buck Mountain here in Humboldt County. And also not far from here are the redwoods, which you can't find any bigger trees, than than our redwoods,
Yeah, that's incredible. So you're near trees that are 13 foot at the base of the tree, and then you have even bigger trees that are the redwoods that are near you.
Correct.
To me, that's Jurassic Park. There's nowhere else in the country that has that, man. And so I try to imagine it sometimes, man. It's just incredible to even think about.
I would like to add another thing, too, that's really interesting about this area, too, is that we have the Van Dusen River that runs north towards the ocean, and just then over another ridge here, 15, 20, maybe 25 miles, 3 miles, we have the South Fork River, and it's running parallel to the Van Dusen running north. And then also we have the Little Van Dusen, the South Fork of the Little Van Dusen. It runs parallel also to all three. And then there's the Eel River that also runs in a northerly direction into the sea. And between all those rivers, we have a series of ridges, long ridges, and that are very long, very, remote. And the main one is what we call South Fork Mountain. And I believe it's considered one of the longest continuous ridges, in the state of California, or probably this part of the United States. But it's very, very, very remote area.
Yeah, that sounds like it. Yeah, I would really love to come up there and visit sometime. I've been almost everywhere in the United States except that area, and
You'd love it.
one day I'll be there, and it's not going to be too long from now because the show is going to permit these things to happen, and I would love to come see people personally and interview them. And anyway, when we were talking, and you had emailed me, you had some very fascinating stories, and I know you have some Bigfoot stuff, and you have a few other type of stories, and I don't want to give them away, but could you start with the story that happened when you were a kid, and then kind of link your dad into that?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that one there. It's this story here is something that has really bothered me for a long time, and my father had just recently just passed away here this last August, and it's even come more to light in my mind now. There might be something there, but anyway, when I was about 3 years of age, I was visiting my grandmother's, and I believe it was in the Sacramento area, and we were there with my mom and dad and stuff, just visiting and that, and I would always wait for the ice cream truck to come, every day.
Mm-hmm.
And because you hear that bell, and stuff. And to me, that was a big thing because I'm up, in the mountains or just you really knew. Even at that age, that was a big thing. But anyway, I remember one of the days we were there, the ice cream truck was coming, I hear the bell, so I went to go find my parents and to go find somebody, to tell them that the truck was coming. And I run around the house, to the side of the house and the back around behind there. And just as I turn the corner, I come right smack into a big bubble. It was floating about, 2-3 feet off the ground. I mean, I was looking up at it just slightly, so it couldn't have been up too high. And there was a baby in it. A big happy baby. And in the background, there was also 2 other bubbles that had babies in them too, and they were just like slowly, going up into the air, and they were looking down at me and just, like real happy and, jovial or whatnot. And I just remember just standing there just watching them, and they're just like, and then they just just lift it off, and then I think the next thing, my parents come, or I run into, somebody, and then it was gone, they just went off. And it was,
so the bubble,
always really stuck in my mind.
So the bubbles themselves were probably like a couple feet in diameter.
They were, but But well, no, they were probably larger than that, Brenton, because these babies were larger than me.
Okay. All right.
They were. That, you know, I mean, because I mean, yeah, they were because they, you know, they stand out. I mean, it was. I mean, it was. I mean, I can remember that big fat face, you know, and I would say that they was, you know, probably 2/3 the size of a, you know, a human, you know, no normal average sized person.
So say a 4 or 5 foot wide bubble.
Yes,
Okay.
that sounds about right. Yeah, and I just remember, like, you know, a bubble, or it could have been a glass sphere or whatnot, but it was a bubble. It was like perfectly from what, yeah, it was a bubble, but I didn't see any, you know, that moving or anything, you know, like a bubble, you know, can or anything. It was just, it was like, but they just like floated off, but like, you know, like off into an angle, up straight, and looking down at me, smiling.
Wow.
Yeah.
What,
I mean,
what
you know,
were they
but
wearing?
one of those really, really, you know, but a really, you know, loving, you know,
Yeah.
smile, you know.
Yeah. What were they kind of wearing? Do you remember? Or you don't? If you don't remember, you don't remember.
I don't know if they had diapers on or anything, but I remember that at least, you know, the head and the body, you know, the hands, you know, like, you know, that's one thing. That's I don't know, you know, that's a good question.
Yeah.
But no, I don't remember that.
Right.
But yeah, that's always stuck in my mind.
So how's this linked to your dad, though?
Well, you know how it links to my dad is that around 30 years later, we were, you know, out deer hunting, you know, out at a deer camp, out hunting one night, and you know, and we'd go out, you know, every season for at least, you know, for 3-4 days at a time, at least every season, you know, the boys get together, you know, and, you know, sit around the fire and tell a few stories and stuff, you know, and at night, you know, and my dad, he come out one night there around the campfire, and he told us a story about when he was a little kid out at the ranch. He grew up out at South Sacramento, and out by what's Morrison Avenue. In fact, my great grandfather, Grandpa Morrison, was named after him because he was the sheriff, the whole thing, you know, he was one of those all-around men back then. But they had a big farm, a ranch, though, back there in Sacramento. And he said one day when he was a really little kid that he encountered these babies in the bubble.
Wow.
Yes. And I couldn't believe it, you know, because I had never ever related my experience to nobody, to my, you know, not even my parents, not even, you know, my wife, you know, nobody. And for him just to come out and say that, you know, that one night, I'm like,
yeah, that is incredible.
You know, and then, yeah. And, you know, and Brendan, and you know, I didn't say anything to him then, but, you know, we did talk about it, though, this past summer, you know, several months back.
Okay, so you
passed away.
You did tell him about you seeing that too?
Yes, I did.
And
yes,
what did he say?
I did. And he also related his story to me too, about it. And he had told me though that you know, he'd seen like a bunch of babies. You know, I had only seen like I remember at least 2 for sure. There could have been 3. But, I mean, you know, he says that the sky was just, you know, there was probably 20 or 30 babies. And that going, you know, up into the air. Just slowly off, happy, you know, and, you know, and he says, I seen a baby in a bubble. And I said, Dad, I believe you. I says, because I seen the same thing too. And he was like, oh, well, how come you never said anything all these, you know? And I says, well, you know,
man,
I'm trying to figure it out, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's just so incredible. I mean, what makes it so incredible is that you had seen that, and then you finally talked to your dad, who saw the same thing. That's just amazing. And it makes you wonder, what the heck, man? I've never heard of nothing like that. I've heard a lot of different stuff. Believe that, man. I collect these kind of stories. That's the first time I've ever heard that particular kind of story, man. That's fascinating. I don't even know what to make
Well,
of it. To tell you
yeah,
the
it's. I
truth.
just wonder if there's some connection, or I don't know. Maybe should I have a talk with my daughter someday about if you've seen one too? What
Yeah,
do you think? What would you do?
right. Yeah, man. You might
For
be
it to
check with
for
the
it to
family.
happen.
Yeah,
Well,
I
you hear about
would.
these abduction cases with UFOs, and it goes passed on down to from the mother down to the child, or whatnot.
Hmm. Yeah.
But there was nothing like that here. I mean, I've never thought, I mean, I
Right.
wasn't abducted or I didn't see any spaceships,
Right.
and and to this day I don't think that it was, anything to do with aliens or anything. I don't know. I just don't
Yeah.
know.
I don't either. I'm telling you, it stumps me.
And
I
I
have
thought
no
I would
clue.
relate that to you, and maybe we can, get some, maybe some replies here
Yeah, yeah.
on the show,
If, yeah, if anyone out there has heard
I
anything,
maybe they put two and two together. So I don't know.
yeah, well, I'm sure there'll be people listening, and there'll probably be someone commenting. You can email me at brentonsawin@gmail.com if you've had any kind of, if you've heard of this before or what have you, and I'll certainly relay this to Steve if he doesn't see it in the comments. If you comment it, that's fine too, but please email it to me so that I can see it, because I can't read all the comments on this channel, just way too many. But man, that's fascinating, Steve, for sure. I just had to have you tell that. That's because I think that I want people to hear stuff they've never heard before, and that's something I've never heard. So for real.
Well, I thought that you were that you were the man, to talk to about it, because you're not afraid to be open about it, about what
Right. Yeah.
anything, you're a straight shooter, let's just say.
Well, thanks, man, because I believe you. So
And
that.
you're welcome. And anytime that you come in the area here in Humboldt County, I would be more than happy to put you up and host you and help you in any way.
Right. Well, thanks, man. I believe me, if I come
You
up that
bet.
way, I'll holler. Believe that.
You're welcome. You're welcome, sir.
Well, now the next cool thing I thought that before we get to the Bigfoot stuff was when you were logging and the Native American legends with the little people. Can you give us some info on that?
Oh yes, the little people. There's a legend here in with the Hoopa Indians, and like the Wailakis, the Yurok and that. They all have their Bigfoot stories and this and that, but they also have stories and legends of what they call the little people. And the little people pretty much, I guess, stick to the river bar, or whatnot, and come out at night and are supposed to be mischievous, and whatnot, and just run in small groups, I guess. And they pretty much stick, down along the river here, in the Hoopa Valley, and also through up into the Yola-Boys, and everywhere along these rivers and stuff are just so full of life, and they can sustain just about anything,
Right, right. Yeah, and
But
that's what I've heard about. Yeah, I've heard of the little people in the Four Corners region. They stay along the rivers, and sometimes they even call them river babies, different things like that. But they tend to be seen around the rivers, so that's right on the money with what I've heard before. So anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I've growing up here, I've heard, all of the stories and this and that. But anyway, one day when I was out logging, we were out in an area that was out close to the Mendocino border of where Humboldt gets down close to Mendocino on a private ranch that also borders the Yola wilderness area, which is close to the headwaters of the North Fork of the Eel River on one side, and then, and also there's the South Fork of the Trinity, that's in there also, comes out of the Yellow Boy.
Right.
But anyway, we were in this area, Brenton, at the very far reaches of our ranch there that we were logging. It was a 6,000 acre private ranch, the logging company I worked for. But anyway, we had been in this one area, and it was a large river bore area that we were splitting our logs across, and we had just started to fall the timber and that in there, and get them set, to start logging in that. And I used to run a cat, or I was a cat skinner. And what a cat skinner is he runs like what a lot of people call a bulldozer. But anyway, I run a G7G that had a winch on it. We'd have a winch line and chokers. We pull our logs and stuff and that with it. Because we have big trees here, so we need big machines. But anyway, one day coming in early on that second day on this job, just at first light, I was coming on the freshly skid trail I put in the day before. My choker setters would always walk ahead of me, but anyway, we were walking in up the skid trail, and they stopped me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, what? Probably a bear, because we have, a lot of our ground workers are from Mexico and whatnot, and they're scared to death of bears. And there's a lot of bears in the area, but anyway, and they're always warning you or anything, there's a bear. But so I thought that's probably what it was, and so I'm like, fine, let's go. And they wouldn't go. So I'm like, oh, geez, So I get off the cat, and they're pointing down at the ground on here on the skid trail, an area, a trail that I bladed off before we went home, I bladed off this trail for, me to skid my logs on. There were 2 different sets of little footprints. The size of, I would like a toddler, well, not a toddler child, well, yeah, maybe a toddler child, a very small toddler child.
Mm-hmm.
2 sets of footprints that size, walking up the trail at going downriver, I guess you'd say, downriver, just right on up the trail, 2 sets of prints, and I thought, oh, it has to be a child, But man, there can't be any kids out there because there's nobody around there for 20, 30 miles. This place is out there, and and the Mexican workers were just petrified, and they started going off about this and that, and my Spanish is limited. It was just limited, work orders and that. And they'd shake their fingers, I don't know if they were shaking their fingers at, and this and that, and they didn't want to go any farther. But, we're here in the middle of a logging operation, we don't have any choice, because they're starting to fall trees around us, because we're starting up for the day, and stuff's happening, man. I don't know if you've been around, a logging operation or anything, but it's very dangerous and it's very, very chaotic, and you got to keep your head up.
Yeah.
But these two sets of tracks were just ambling right on up the trail, and I couldn't believe it. But I had, I wanted to follow them. I mean, of all times, man, I didn't, I wanted to shut everything down, say to hell with work or whatnot. I mean, that was one of them times, I mean, I wanted to really, because this bugged me, and it still bugs me to this day, because part of me thinks, maybe there was some little kid walking out there, or kids. They have to be kids, because there was more than one set of tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it was, like the little people. But they weren't barefoot tracks though. They had shoes on, some kind of foot gear.
Right.
So that's why I thought they was kids at first, and I just it does bug me because
Yeah. I mean, but you knew there was no kids up there, because your crew comes up there. You don't bring your kids. And
this is a private ranch. This is a private ranch. I mean, you can look it up. It's the Travis Ranch, and it borders, Mendocino County, the Yola Bully Wilderness area, the North Fork or South Fork of the Eel. I'm not sure which one. That I might have my names mixed up there, but runs through there on it. And Red Mountain Creek is there close by, and it's just the only way you can get in there is through one gate, and it's like 2.5, 3 hours from paved road, once you go through that gate to get to where we were at.
Wow, that's a long trip.
Yes.
And if there was a child walking, there would have been adult footprints around too, right?
Absolutely. But why would you be? I mean, Well,
yeah.
I mean, there would have to be adult prints. Exactly.
Wow.
But there wasn't. Because, like I said, when I come out, I always blade, the skid trail off. You lightly, rough it off and stuff. And this is a new job, this area too. So that's actually why I had bladed it off, because it was my first. Excuse me. It was the first time that I was going to use that particular skid trail.
I had this other lady tell me a story where she was in her car and there was something moving in the leaves, and she said it seemed like it was trying to cloak in the leaves or whatever. It was blending real well. She couldn't tell what it was, and then all of a sudden something starts across the road. She said the thing was only about 9 inches tall, and it was a humanoid. And she said it was real jerky and kind of spastic walking. But she said it was a human-shaped, like, little person. And it walked across the road, kind of jerky-like. And she said, I know what I saw. It was a human figure that walked across the road. And it walked right on across. And so, I mean, I thought, wow, man, that's incredible. You hear about stories and folklore and things like that, but the more that you cover this kind of genre, the more you realize that maybe these things really aren't folklore, because you hear different stories here and over there, and over time, it's kind of like this stuff is real.
Exactly.
In the times where people talked about ogres and things like that, I think that it might have been the Bigfoot. And there's lots of different stories back through history about the dog-headed people, the cephali and things like that. And so now we hear a lot of stories about the dog man, and you've heard stories about trolls, even to whatever, and here you're telling a story. You see little footprints walking up this skid trail, or the trail that you cleared off, and
Right.
it makes you wonder. It's like heck, fire, man. There's stuff out there in the woods. These doleful creatures and these things that the Bible talks about that live out in the wilderness away from people. That I talked about the satyr. Basically in the Hebrew it means hairy. It's some type of hairy creature that lives out away from people. And then it talks about and doleful creatures, and it talks about several different kinds of beings and creatures and stuff that live out away from people. And then we hear these stories, and it's like, man, this is real. There's a reality to this. It's not folklore. This is really going on, and it's quite incredible to think about.
It is. It is. And, like, you take, like, the country of Iceland, Britain, I mean, fairies and the little
Mm-hmm.
people, they've refused to build the roads in certain areas because of, they'll disturb the little people and whatnot. I mean,
Yeah,
I believe there's something there. I mean, it's just,
yeah, and
yeah,
a lot of those things are around boulder fields. And when the 411 missing person stuff came out, and a lot of people that came up missing was near boulder fields, and it starts making you
exactly.
wonder. It's like, wow, what's going on here? There's something. This all is linking together somehow. There's unknown stuff that goes on that people just are not aware of, and and as I collect more and more of these stories, it makes me wonder more and more about the folklore. Really isn't just made up stuff. It isn't fairy tale. There's a reality to it, and whether it's supernatural or totally real or a combination or whatever, I don't know. Now, I'm just saying that there's a reality to this because there's a physical aspect to much of what we thought was folklore. Little footprints walking up a trail 3 hours from the gate. That's just not possible.
Yeah,
There's something that was walking, and I think that if you've been a person that's been in the woods and hunted all your life, you would know if that was a rabbit footprint. You would know if that was some other type of footprint. But you saw that it was two beings walking bipedally, side by side or
right.
whatever, that
Yeah,
had
they
shoes
were.
on.
Well, no, I think it was 40. Yeah, it was like one following the other. Um,
Yeah,
but
and
yes, I do. I'm very aware of tracks, and I'm always looking out for tracks because I like to be aware of what's living around me and that because it's just like
and
you
and
said.
and those tracks that you saw, there was no possibility that they were any kind of critter. They were actual. Did they look a lot like a shoe print, or they look what did it look like?
A shoe print. They were a shoe print, but there was like no grooves in them, or no tracks or grooves on the sole or anything. It was flat, smooth sole,
Like a little sandal print.
like a sandal, right? Like foot is just a type of footwear.
Yeah,
Is what they were wearing. And
very
it
very
was
interesting.
just it was rounded, it wasn't, they weren't perfectly, shaped like a shoe, the lines, they were like it was definitely a person, you could
Right.
tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, they didn't have the waffle, print or nothing like that.
Right. Yeah.
Is what I'm getting at. It was like a flat sole.
Yeah. Well,
But
what
yeah,
other
just
kind of stuff have you found out there? If you encountered any Sasquatch type creatures?
well, I'll tell you, I one time in the late 70s, about 77, there was 5 of us that went up on South Fork Mountain to go deer hunting. And it had just freshly snowed that night before up there, because South Fork Mountain is about, 1,500 to 2,000 feet higher than where I live right here, because I live right here at about almost 3,000 feet elevation. But anyway, it snowed that night there, and we were going to go up there and go deer hunting and go on top of the ridge. We spread out and do a drive down off the top of the mountain and walk all the way down to the Mad River. And we've done it many times. We do it every year, but we do it twice a day or whatnot. And it takes about 3 or 4 hours, or 3 hours to do it, I would say. Some depends. And one time, that time that we went up there, we had just started off the top of the ridge, and we come down about 100 yards, and we come across, I had come across a set of tracks of human barefoot prints walking parallel in a southerly direction on the, walking parallel to the ridge in the snow, just walking in a straight line, like it was following, the ridge line south. And I just couldn't, it's like, I knew it just snowed that night, and there's no way anyone's going to be up there barefoot. I mean, if they were, why, And I got to looking at these tracks, and they were larger than mine, and I wear a size 15 shoe, and they were probably, I'd say, about 16 inches long, and probably 8 inches wide or whatnot. I don't know. And they were spaced apart, the stride, about 1.5 feet longer than, a stride that I would take. And it was just, I just couldn't believe it, So I started to follow these tracks. And no sooner I follow them for just a few minutes, I run into my uncle, who was at the end of the line, on the south end. He was at the end, and then it was me, and then it was my father, and then it was this guy, Lynn Stewart, and then Terry Michaels. There was 5 of us up there, and everybody come across the tracks, anyway. But anyway, I run into my uncle, and he was sitting there looking at the tracks, and he was just bewildered, and I come up on him, and I says, "Do you see what I see?" And he says, "Yes, I do." And I says, "There you go. There you go." I says, "That right there is your proof. Those there are Bigfoot tracks." And he says, "I think you're right." So we proceeded to follow them. I says, "Come on, let's follow them." I said, I mean, they're so fresh. I mean, you can see the lines in the foot, in his feet, the grooves on his feet. And so I knew they were fresh because it had just snowed. That snow was not more than 3 hours old.
Right.
And it was just a couple inches deep. And I says, "Tank, let's go. That's his nickname, Tank." And I says, let's follow. So we did, and the tracks went south, and then it paralleled back. It cut back, and then it was zigzagging back. So we, went ahead and we followed them, and then they would zigzag back again. And what he was doing, he was going parallel to the ridge, and then he'd go a couple 100 yards, excuse me, down, like he'd go south down the ridge, and then he'd cut back, and then he'd go north, and then south. He was zigzagging his way, like he was cutting back and forth, working his way down to the river.
Hmm.
So we kept on the trail and followed them, and we started to get down into the timberline because they're on top of South Fork. It's all oaks and grassland and all that. And you get down lower, you hit the timber and then the river. But we were coming down into the in the timber. The tracks were zigzagging back and forth, and then it come down in the timber and of course, there had to be one of those tule fog, down there like there always is in that area now. And as we got down into the timber, I could pick up this odor that was it would smell like a buck rut crossed with like a dirty dog, I would say. I mean, a real really big dog. And it was very pungent. It's like, or I don't know if pungent's the word, but it's like you can almost feel it, when you breathe it in, it's like when you're close to a skunk or something. I don't know if anyone's ever been close around a skunk.
Mm-hmm.
That smells so strong, it's so thick, you can feel it, breathe it in. And it's just awful. And we started smelling this odor, and I knew the tracks were getting closer and closer, and we were getting into the trees then, and no, I said I'm not going in there. I knew I could smell something, and we were getting close, and I had a 308, and my partner he also carried a 308 too. But I don't know, Brenton. I mean, it was really out of the ordinary. But to make a long story short, we cut off the trail and we went ahead and went on down to the river into the rendezvous area.
Mm-hmm.
And an hour later, half an hour now, and then the gang, started coming on in. And that was the topic, the tracks. Everybody had come across the tracks. And one guy that I forgot to mention his name was Clay Cunningham. And he was in the service. He was an ex-Navy SEAL and that, decorated and all that and whatnot. He used to hunt with us and all, a very avid hunter and that. But anyway, he also took it upon himself to follow the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that when they got down into the trees and all that he come up on them and he followed them and all that, and then he said all of a sudden he realized that it had doubled back and was then following him, and he was shook up, Brenton.
Mm-hmm.
When he come up, I mean, this man was shook up, and he, I mean, he didn't believe in Bigfoot, but he certainly had a different opinion after that day, because he said, he says, I did everything I knew or whatnot, as far as dealing with a man or whatnot out there. And I guess to him, and it was like a game. They had some kind of game, those two out there. But it really shook Clay up, and it bothered him all the way till when he finally he passed away here 5 years ago. But yeah, it actually had come and had doubled back on him, and it was pursuing him.
So when he figured out that it was following him, that just kind of freaked him out then.
Yes, he did. He said because he was so sure that he was the pursuer.
Right. And when you realize you aren't, you're the pursued.
Yeah, exactly. And with him, with his training and his experience, and he was out there alone, and he never did ever really go into detail and relate to me, play by play what happened out there, but yeah, what he did relate to me was that it had come and doubled back on him. And he said that it had muddied up a mud puddle. He said he believes that it was intentional to show him, him that it was, in control.
Hmm. So here
like,
he is.
Wow.
He's an ex-SEAL, and he is good.
Yes, he was.
He's good at tracking something.
He was
pursuing
he was an ex-SEAL. He was on the boats, the river boats.
Right, yeah.
But
they're
he had the training.
Yeah, they're trained. And
hunting was his passion.
Yeah. And here is something that he's pursuing, and he thinks he's closing in on it. And he realized this thing had tricked him, and it had doubled back and somehow flanked him and is on his chest. Yeah, I could see how that could be pretty scary, especially if you know as much as he would have known, and known what to the level that this thing thought. That would be scary to him. If you were, following the tracks and all of a sudden you thought something was following you, you might not have been as scared. But knowing what he knows, to think that, hey, this thing left me some messages and stuff that he didn't even tell you about, and all of a sudden it was following me, he knew, wow.
Yeah, he knew.
Yeah.
He said he knew the game was over.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just hightailed his fanny out. And, and also that same day, my father, had come across the tracks too. Excuse me. And he didn't follow him. He just kept going on down. But see, this thing was going and zigzagging. So all of us were being exposed to these set of tracks, more than once, especially the guys at the other end. Because he seemed to be wanting to go more into, their direction, but he would go back my way and then their way, my way, he's going down.
Right.
And then when we got into the trees, I quit the zigzagging and then I was going straight down. And that, and that's what my father did. My father said, that he came across the tracks twice. But anyway, he says, I come on down. He says, after the last time that he come onto those tracks, he went on down the hill further, and he says, I was going on down, and I went over this little rise, and I come down onto the top of this big log, and he said, all of a sudden, this coyote just come out of nowhere. It was, like it was, laying down, hiding, underneath that, log, and he said, I thought I had it right there, But he says, I've never seen a coyote do that, hole up like that,
Right.
But that was something I thought that was kind of a little odd there.
Wow.
That day.
Wow.
And,
yeah.
And I also had an experience in the Trinity Alps too. That was probably it is the scariest and frightening, encounter I've had with Bigfoot.
Well, let's hear it. Tell me more.
Okay. Well, in 1982, actually the year I graduated from high school, one of my things I was planned to do for that summer was to go backpacking into the Trinity Alps. And I did so. I went with my homeroom teacher was also one of my he was my basketball coach, a couple of years, but he was into hiking too, but anyway, we just hooked up and went that summer to the Alps, and we went to a place called Papoose Lake, which is, you go up the old Helena Bridge Road, and hit the trailhead there. And this is over in Trinity County, of course, the Trinity Alps. And it is a wilderness area. And it is filled with lots of glacier-fed lakes, and and there's glacier creeks and streams. It's one of the most beautiful areas, Brenton, that we have here, in the area. It's really beautiful. So it's a must-see, for backpackers and whatnot. But it's also very, very remote. And the lake that we went to, Lake Papoose, was, I believe it was 15 miles one way in. And it was a 2-day, 1-night hike for us to get in there, and we did. And when we got there, there's a glacier there that feeds that's a lake there on the back end of it, because it's what it is like a giant cinder cone, that's halfway open space, and then the lake's in the base of it, and there's a glacier there that feeds it. But anyway, on one side of it's all glacier, and on 1/3 of it, I'd say, and then the other third's just solid granite rock. And on the other side of it, and this is as we're going around the lake, there's like a strip of timber that comes down all the way down to the lake, and that's where the best camping spots are at, But it's all like on a hillside and stuff, and there's one small flat at the bottom. So when we got there, there was a couple of campers already there. So we couldn't camp right there by the lake. We had to go up the hill, and we wanted to kind of stay away from everybody. So we were probably about 200 yards away from the lake, our camp. And how we were set up is that we'd find like just a nice little flat enough area to put one little 2-man tent. And then up another 100 foot or more, there was a little flat area for me to put my tent, and that was also the kitchen area where we ate, and that was our camp area. We were up there, but we were, not in the best spot. So we'd been there for a couple of days, and check things out there, just some fishing and some swimming and all this and that. And then we decided one day that we would walk up to the very top of the rim there of the lake, which is over 9,000 feet elevation, and snow. And it was completely snow covered. And we went up there, and it was neat. There was like some caves, and there was a big granite rock. This and that. We had real fun up there, just checking things out. Kind of skied our way down and all this and that. And just really had a long, strenuous day up there. Had fun. But anyway, we come down and we got ready for the night. And we had our dinner, we always had this freeze-dried foods. Stuff that was real easy. And so anyway, we bedded down for the night as it got dark. And just laying there in our tents and dozed off and slept there for a while. And around midnight, I'd say, I heard this like a whistle, like a short whistle call, not a woof whistle, but just kind of like a little shrill whistle. I thought that woke me up, and I laid there and I listened. I didn't hear anything there, but what I did notice though when I woke up is that I didn't hear any crickets. I didn't hear any insect noise. I didn't hear nothing like that. And that's something that, living out here in the woods and being a mountain person and this and that, we always pay attention to. Because the crickets and the cicadas and all that, that make the buzzing noises and all that, they are actually nature's burglar alarm. If they're not buzzing and them crickets aren't a chirping or whatnot, there's something about that's at least the size of a deer or more. Because it takes a lot of movement to stop the insect noise. And I noticed that there was an insect noise. So then I was pretty sure that I'd heard something, that was a whistle I heard. So I laid there and I intently listened. And then a few minutes later, I heard a footstep. Like a just one footfall. Okay, I'm listening. There was another footfall, and then I picked up another footfall behind it. The first footfall. And I could hear this slowly, like a slow walk, like foot, crunch, 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 like that, slowly coming down the hill towards where I was sleeping there in my tent. And I was laying there, and I'm like, I know those are, footfalls, and there ain't no insect noise. I can hear pretty good. And they was getting closer, and I was starting to get worried because where I was set up there in my tent, it was just a small flat. But I had one of those old, like those two-man tents, where the ropes go off the ends, to pull the poles. Right. And I had all those strings coming out, and this thing was getting close. These footfalls, and I was worried that because I was all zipped up and all that in there too. That something, I can hear something walking towards me, and I'm afraid. I mean, it's so close now. I mean, because when I woke up from the first whistle to when I heard the first footfall, that first footfall was probably 50 feet from me. I forgot to add that. I'm sorry. I mean, it was very close. Because it woke me up out of my sleep, and I just, and it was obviously it snuck up on me. But anyway, these footfalls were like slowly coming up on me, and I'm here on my tent, and I'm like here all by myself, and I don't know what the heck's going on. I'm all zipped in, and I don't have a gun. And that all I have with me is I got a big K-bar knife. That's the only weapon I have. So anyway, I'm listening to these footfalls, and I'm thinking this can't be true. And then I hear a single cough. And then when I heard that cough, what coughs? I mean, nothing coughs but a human or a person.
Right.
And when I heard that cough, it's there. It's right. I mean, they're right there, whatever. But I didn't smell anything. Now is what was odd, because see, this is after my first Bigfoot experience, and so I knew that probably what had come down, that this was a Bigfoot. I knew that this was probably a Bigfoot coming down upon my tent, but I didn't smell it though. So I
know they don't all have that smell.
A little different,
yeah.
Right? Yeah, but I was worried, Brent, that I was zipped up in there, and anyway, because they got these strings out and all that, and it's going to hit my tent, and it's going to collapse my tent, and I'm here. So anyway, I get this knife out, and I got this plan to where it's anyway, I got this knife out, and I'm holding it up in the air, and I got my hand on the tent, because I'm already out of my sleeping bag. I got my hand on the tent, and I'm just feeling for any kind of movement, on those strings or whatnot, because I mean, it's that, whatever's out there is that close, and I'm just waiting for something touching that tent. My plan was I was going to slice the back of that tent, and out that puppy I was going to go. I was going to run downhill. That was my plan. And just it's all building up. I'm ready. Anytime and this and that. And my partner, which was 100 feet down below me, all of a sudden just comes out of his tent and just starts screaming and yelling and banging on a pan, and ding, 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 ding. And these woods just exploded with these things just got the hell out of there so quick, Brenton. It sounded like a herd of buffalo, cutting out of there. And then he yelled up at me, after they took off. He says, "Hey, are you all right? You still there?" And I'm like,
"You think
yeah.
there was more than one?"
I know there was more than one because I could tell by the footprint sound.
Right.
But the thing of it is that these things had come down the exact same way we had went up to the top.
Right.
Which was
what did your friend say?
Because they
What did your friend
that was
think?
the only way to come down there.
Yeah.
Pardon?
What did your friend think it was?
He said he thought maybe it was a bear.
He thought it was a bear?
Yeah, that's what he said. But I told him I didn't think so because it coughed. I heard a cough. And I went and we looked, and the forest floor and all, it was tore up. And this and that. But, he wouldn't believe it.
Right.
But as soon as you go through, it was all forest floor. Sticks. Years of old growth sticks and all that falling down there around that lake. There was a strip of timber that went up, and then you got up on the granite, the top of this, the Alps there. It's all snow and glacier.
Right.
We didn't go back up there anymore after that time. But it just, I thought maybe,
And
maybe they were checking us out.
What you were hearing coming toward the tent.
Excuse me?
When you heard it coming towards the tent, you figured it was a bipedal.
Yes, I do, because I really intently listen, to the sounds, of the steps, because when you're camping, there's deer. We run into deer all the time, but deer, these were too heavy of steps, and they were also cautious.
Right.
Too, at their approach. And see, this is one of the reasons why I called in, is because I listened to a couple of your other shows about a game warden that called in, and he had talked about the aggressive behavior of Bigfoot and how you really have to watch yourself from that around out here. And the gentleman is correct. I'm convinced that that they are, can be aggressive, and I think that was I don't know if they were really maybe being curious, or if it was they were going to try to snatch me, or what. But I just thought their approach was kind of stealthy.
Yeah. Well, they're probably opportunists. They were coming to see what they could find. Look, I've been camping before, man. I heard them walking around my tent, and the dog was like shivering up next to me, kind of deal. And I was rationalizing it was someone else that was camping, and but there was no one. There was not any other campsites around. I don't know why I was doing that, but and my buddy, he was gone on his boat night fishing. I was sleeping. I was just so tired. I was wanting to sleep, and his dog wouldn't come out of the tent, so he just left his dog with me. And but anyway, I heard something coming, approaching the tent, and I just thought it was him, that he was back in the boat. Well, I woke up and I didn't hear the boat come in, so I was like, "Hey, buddy, is that you? Is that you?" And I just thought, well, he didn't answer.
Right.
Never mind. I was just tired. But the things was over there, um, snagging stuff off the picnic table and stuff like that. They were being opportunists, man. You know what I mean? And the next
Right.
day, I was accusing him. I was like, "Dude, did you eat all those chips? Did you eat all that? Or this? You know what I mean?" It's like, "Dang, man, I didn't want
Well,
to accuse him
my
there."
spot was the kitchen area too. Brenton.
Yeah, yeah,
So you're right. I never, even though I've read that, I didn't. I kind of have. I didn't think about that. That's right. My area was the kitchen, but we
yeah,
were careful. Because of bears. You don't want to leave any smell. You wash your dishes a long ways, away from your sleeping areas,
right,
and whatnot. You be careful there.
yeah,
But, back to the aggressive behavior of Bigfoot, though, I worked for a gentleman by the name of Randy McMillan from McMillan Logging for several years, and his father, Mike McMillan, was one of the top diesel mechanics here for Caterpillar and logging equipment and whatnot. But anyway, he worked for Matthews Machinery out here, and he was their head mechanic. But anyway, he went out and did a lot of repair works out in the 50s and whatnot, out on, the go roads and the roads out at Bluff Creek and whatnot,
right,
when Jerry Crew was out there and stuff. And him and I had a couple of discussions about Bigfoot and that, and he had told me that he had actually replaced seats in the cats
mm-hmm,
and other equipment, that they would be torn out. And there would be other, damage or vandalism, I guess you'd say, to the equipment. They've seen 85-foot, 7/8-inch skid lines, winch lines, thrown up into trees, 20, 30 feet. 50-gallon drums of oil and diesel, were picked up and carried down the road and then thrown down over the bank. Maybe they go, 50 yards or whatnot. And they find them down, pick them down, off down across the creek, there in Bluff Creek and that. But yeah, they seem to I think it's a territorial thing.
yeah,
with them and that. But yes, he said he seen the tracks. I mean, the tracks were out in plain view, quite a bit. I mean, there were a few people that tried to hoax some tracks later. But
right,
when they were first going in there, it was just like what I do. I specialize in pioneering roads and also, logging roads or just regular Forest Service roads or whatnot. And we go into areas that we're the first ones in there, really.
right,
And stuff, so, the stuff we see, it's like that ranch that I was on there, the Travis Ranch. One of my jobs was, it's funny, that part of the property that they owned, it was 40 acres, I believe. They own right in the middle of the Olaboles, and it's one of they're like one of the only families left that still own, property, in the middle of a wilderness area or whatnot. And this family's always held this property. It's out in the middle of the Olaboles, and you wouldn't know it because the only way to get to it is by a road off of the ranch. But anyway, I used to go in there every year and take out the water bars and smooth up the roads for the big shots to come in here and do their deer hunting and all that and whatnot. And one year when I was in there, I come across these two guys that were in there in the middle of the bullies there with, the camping gear and all this and that. And I thought maybe they was marijuana growers or something, there. And we, because what else would they be way out there or something, But anyway, I went and I confronted them and told them, you're on private property and all that. But they were right close to Forest Service too. And they had identification on them that they were a wildlife biologist for the government.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay, and all that. And we got to talking and that. And I said, God, you guys are really way out here and all that. What are you looking for? Are you counting the bear or the deer or all this and all that? And he told me that they were out there studying a family of Bigfoot.
Wow.
And I was, it kind of not, kind of threw me there for a second because they did have the proper identification. It looked, good to me. And these guys, beards, professor looking, that you can tell the people, those type of guys, they're just, real fit, and really,
Yeah.
and, in the nature or whatnot. And, I thought he was joking and all that. And so later, that same winter, and I was talking to a friend of mine that works for the Forest Service and that has a very high position. We were talking one day at a private dinner and had a few cocktails. Tongues were getting a little loose and all that. I brought up the subject, about Bigfoot and about what I had seen, and if that was really true. And he had told me that yes, that it was true. That the United States Forest Service does have a clandestine program going, and they've had a program going. The government's always knew that there is the existence of Bigfoot, and they've been studying it, but they're trying to keep it, I guess, from what he told me, is that they want to keep it under wraps, because if this was to come out, if the government was to confirm the existence of Bigfoot, the way how we do any more kind of developments or, logging or anything, the repercussions of that, they said they can't handle it. And so he's saying that what the thing that they're really out to do is to study him and to learn as much as they can, but to kind of try to manage him in that, and I guess just let him, live.
Right.
And that's I believe that.
Oh yeah, I do too.
I really truly believe that, because I've read the 411 books. Very, very fascinating, but I don't know, your listeners, if you mention the 411 books to them by David Paulides,
yeah.
Let's just say, if you haven't read them, I highly recommend them. They're some of the best reading that you can do on any of these subjects, but you and I know the 411 is that there's really something there, man. And,
yeah.
And I know that that they know, and that the government, they just don't know how to come out. It's just one of those things. They don't know. What to do. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. They don't know how to bring that out without causing a, like you said, economic issue. And Yeah, I've talked about that a lot of different times. Yeah.
Well, you see this area here, Brenton. I mean, that's what we're, logging and the fishing. I mean, that's our bread and butter. We don't have the sawmills, that we used to. We don't have the logging that we used to, and because the spotted owl and the marbled murrelet and some of these other endangered species, really took their toll on the logging industry, and
Right.
just it's and the NAFTA thing and that, and it's just been one thing after another.
Yeah.
And
There's a
but
lot of
then
national forest.
but
There's
then
a
maybe they should bring it out too,
Well, there's a lot of
and
national
protect him.
forests.
And but
There's a lot of state parks. There's a lot of national forests. You look across up in the northwest where you're at, all the way out through Utah. Look at the vast areas that are national parks, national forests and stuff. There's huge, huge areas. A lot of people, like, oh, we're encroaching on their territory. You don't even realize how huge of areas that are set apart for national forest. We have one called Daniel Boone that goes all the way through Kentucky, from up in Ohio area all the way through Kentucky down into Tennessee. It's a huge. I mean, and there's other national forests all throughout the state. There's a lot of land set aside for these things to live in, and I think it's partly because even where I had my encounter down on Kentucky Tennessee border is a different state park down there around Dale Hollow Lake, and it's a pretty good size little state park too, national forest, and so there's tremendous amounts of areas throughout the whole country that are set apart. These things live, and they don't need protected. They've been around for a long time, and you try to go hunt them and see what happens.
right, just
I've
try it.
I've had stories of people shooting them and stuff like that. But if you go out there, you pursuing them and trying to hunt them, I guarantee you're going to end up dead. You might kill one, but you ain't going to drag its body out of the woods. You're going to be dead, and and they're going to bury it, their own and you, and so.
Exactly. And that's one more thing I'd like to touch on about Bigfoot. About you mentioned about the dead bodies and that. Now, I have lived my whole life in the woods. I hunt. I'm a successful deer hunter. I'm a meat hunter. I'm not a trophy hunter. I'm a hunter, and I fish. The whole works, and this and that. And I've been all over these woods, deep into these woods, and I've never seen a dead bear carcass bones. Rarely see deer. The only time I see a deer carcass is if a car hit it,
Mm-hmm.
or any kind of dead animal. Because, people always say, well, how come we haven't found the bodies, or how come we haven't found the bones, Hey, you just don't find that stuff out here in the woods. And you're right. I believe that Bigfoot, he hides and buries his dead, too.
Yeah, I do.
But go find him. You're not going to find anything like that, at least in these woods here.
All right.
So, yeah, right. There's no evidence that way.
All right. Yeah, it's just not. You're not going to ever prove it. That you might catch it on film or something like that, and there has been people caught it on film, pictures and stuff like that. But everybody always says it's fake, so you're just not ever going to prove it. And if you do come up with a body, you probably aren't going to get it out of the woods. And if you do, someone's going to confiscate it from you.
Yeah.
Look, I've had proof trying to be given to me, and it never gets here. Believe that. Seriously. And I don't even hear from the people no more. I've had it a few times.
Well,
it's like, I don't know what happened to them.
When
It
I
never
seen
showed
my
up.
tracks, I wish I would have had a cell phone.
Yeah.
back then when I had my experiences, and we didn't have cell phones or cameras, or the cell phone cameras and that like you do now.
Right.
So yeah, you're right. The evidence has been kind of thin, but
Yeah.
I
Well,
would
I mean,
have some good photos for you. I might.
people come up with some photos of footprints and stuff like that, and even some footage. I'm talking about like clear pictures, like absolutely 100% clear. You're just not gonna ever
Right.
prove it. I just don't think it's gonna ever be proven. Um, Other than you go out there in the woods and you see one. When you have an
Yeah,
encounter,
and
you don't need it proven no more. You know what I mean?
right. And if I had any footage or any clear footage, I certainly wouldn't charge anybody to see it. I would put it right out there. In fact, I would put it on Brenton first.
Yeah, there you go, man. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Yeah,
No, because
contact me.
like I said earlier, I believe that you're one of the the straight shooters in this field,
Thanks,
and
man.
and because I've listened and read on these other shows and stuff, and no, I thought that if for any I couldn't talk to anybody better than you. I mean, I think this is a good time for me to get this story out. And I've been nervous the whole time. I've been a little tongue-tied from that
No,
because,
man.
being on the
You're doing
show.
good.
Yeah. And, I have a few other, things that I, have come across, but
Well, you've shared some
I
fascinating
think we've
stuff.
covered enough tonight.
Yeah. I mean, you shared some very cool stuff. The babies thing and the little people thing, and I mean, to me, that's just all just incredible. The fans are gonna love it, man. I'm telling you, they're gonna be like, "Wow, that's so cool." And so I really appreciate it, man. And you can save my cell number that I called you on earlier. Save that to your phone and contact me anytime you want, man. And
I appreciate that. I will do that. I will do that. And like I said, if you ever, get in the area, I have room.
right.
And I could take you to, you want to go to Bluff Creek? I take you to Bluff Creek, man.
Yeah, that would
Wherever
be
you want to go,
that'd be
I'll
super
show
cool,
it to
man.
you.
For real.
All
Right.
that stuff. Like I said, I'm not afraid to tell the locations where I've been, or the people that were there, or whatnot, because I have nothing to hide. Because I mean, just
Man, no sense in hiding nothing in this day and
yeah,
age.
it just blows my, it's just like, it's a mystery that needs
Yeah.
to be solved.
Life's too short to hide stuff. But anyway, hold on for just a second there, Steve. And anyway, everybody out there in YouTube land, I appreciate you all listening. If you got something you want to share, you can contact me at brentonsawin@gmail.com. If you want to contribute to help me with this channel, you can go to a link in the description. PayPal me, super easy to use. Until next time, God bless, and we'll see you all on the next video. Bye.